It was an ordinary morning in Ouagadougou, the bustling capital city of Burkina Faso. The streets were alive with their usual rhythm: honking motorbikes, shouting vendors, and the scent of sizzling street food hanging thick in the air. Among the noise and movement was a young girl named Awa, barely 16, standing behind a small wooden cart by the roadside. With nimble fingers, she carefully arranged roasted peanuts in small plastic bags, each one a lifeline to help her family survive another day. Awa had been selling on the street since she was just 10 years old. Her father had passed away in a mining accident, and her mother struggled to provide for the family. Like many children across Burkina Faso, Awa's dreams of going to school remained just that: dreams. She had never stepped inside a classroom. Her life revolved around long hours under the sun, calling out to passers-by, hoping someone would buy her peanuts. She watched students in uniforms walk past her every morning and wondered what it might feel like to carry a school bag instead of a basket of snacks. But fate had something extraordinary in store. One sweltering afternoon, as she fanned the flies away from her tray, a group of vehicles with tinted windows slowly made their way through the narrow street. At first, Awa didn't pay attention. She was too busy trying to get a customer's attention. But as the convoy slowed down near her cart, she noticed something odd. The lead car stopped. Security men stepped out, scanning the area. Then, to her complete shock, a tall man in a traditional Faso Danfani outfit stepped out of the vehicle. The man was none other than President Ibrahim Traoré. The president was known for his no-nonsense demeanor, bold leadership, and military background. But no one expected him to stop at a roadside peanut stand. The entire street seemed to freeze. People gasped and reached for their phones. Awa stood frozen, unsure whether to run or kneel. But the president smiled gently and approached her cart. "What's your name?" he asked. "Awa," she whispered, barely audible. He looked at her small hands, stained with peanut dust, and asked how long she had been doing this. She told him her story: her father's death, her mother's illness, and her dream of going to school. The crowd listened in stunned silence. The president nodded, visibly moved. Right there, in front of dozens of onlookers and cameras, President Traoré turned to one of his aides and said, "Get her enrolled in school. Make sure everything she needs is taken care of: uniforms, books, food, everything. She's not staying on the street." The crowd erupted into cheers. Awa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her knees buckled, and she burst into tears. President Traoré knelt and gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You are the future of this country, Awa, and the future doesn't belong on the streets." The very next day, government officials arrived at Awa's home. They met her mother, brought supplies, and took Awa to one of the best schools in the district. She was given a clean uniform, a backpack full of books, and access to meals. But more than that, she was given dignity and hope. It didn't end there. President Traoré followed up personally. He ensured Awa's progress was monitored and even invited her and her mother to the presidential palace weeks later. Photos from that day flooded social media. Awa in her neat school uniform, shyly standing beside the man who had changed her life forever. It wasn't a PR stunt. It was genuine. The president didn't want media fanfare. In fact, he had only stepped out of his convoy that day because he noticed Awa working in the heat and felt compelled to do something. The gesture resonated deeply across the nation. In a time when many leaders are accused of being detached from their people, Traoré's act of compassion struck a chord. Many Burkinabe, both young and old, felt a renewed sense of pride and trust. For them, this wasn't just about Awa. It was about a country where the leader saw the pain of his people and acted on it. Inspired by the event, the government announced a new program aimed at identifying and supporting vulnerable children who work on the streets. The initiative, named L'Espoir des Jeunes, Hope of the Youth, was rolled out in multiple urban centers. Social workers were deployed to document the stories of street vendors under the age of 18. Within a few weeks, dozens of children were pulled from harsh street life and placed into educational institutions with full state support. Awa's story became a symbol, not of charity but of possibility. In interviews, Awa later said she still found it hard to believe what had happened. "I thought the president would never even look at someone like me," she said. "But he didn't just see me. He listened, he helped, and he changed my life." She now dreams of becoming a teacher. "I want to help children like me. If the president believes I can do something, then I will." President Traoré, known for his tough stance against foreign exploitation and military corruption, showed another side of leadership that day, a side of empathy and human connection. And perhaps in that single act of kindness, he did more for his country than any policy ever could. He reminded people that leadership is not just about power or speeches. It's about heart. Months after the encounter, President Traoré was asked during a press conference about Awa. He smiled and replied, "I didn't do anything extraordinary. I did what any father would do. The real hero is Awa. She never gave up." That moment defined not only the president's leadership style, but also gave a new direction to governance in Burkina Faso. His popularity soared, not just because of grand political statements, but because of one silent promise, that no child would be forgotten. As Awa settles into her school routine, attending classes, making friends, and working hard, her life stands as a testament to what happens when compassion meets action. Her story is now shared in classrooms, radio programs, and community centers. It is a story that brings tears, inspires, smiles, and most importantly, plants the seed of hope in thousands of children across the country. She is no longer a street vendor. She is a student, a dreamer, and a living example of how one person's life can change when a leader decides to care. And in the heart of Burkina Faso, on a dusty road where peanuts used to be sold, stands a small plaque now, placed by local residents. It reads, "Here a dream began. Thank you, President Traoré." Over the months that followed, Awa's transformation became a point of pride not only for her neighborhood but for the entire nation. Teachers at her new school marveled at her dedication. Though she had never held a pencil before that year, Awa quickly caught up to her peers. She stayed late to ask questions, read her textbooks again and again at night by candlelight, and practiced her handwriting with almost obsessive discipline. Her teachers often said she wasn't just learning, she was on a mission. Word of Awa's progress reached the president's office regularly. But it wasn't just bureaucratic updates, it was emotional. Staff members admitted they sometimes teared up reading the reports. One aide confessed in a radio interview, "In a job where we deal with politics and crisis every day, Awa's story reminds us why we do what we do." Meanwhile, the L'Espoir des Jeunes program gained momentum. Inspired by Awa, communities across Burkina Faso began reporting children who were working in markets at traffic lights or selling snacks on roadside paths. For the first time, there was a channel through which help could reach them. Schools were instructed to make space for these children. Social programs were funded to provide meals and health care, and a hotline was launched for citizens to report child labor cases. President Traoré made surprise visits to several schools without prior notice. On one such visit to a school in Bobo Dioulasso, he entered a classroom where a group of former street children were learning math. The teacher paused the lesson in shock, but Traoré waved her to continue. He sat quietly among the students, listening, watching, and eventually speaking with each child after class. "I'm not here to give a speech," he told the teacher privately. "I'm here to remind them that they matter." His visits weren't broadcast. There were no cameras. Just a man walking into classrooms because he cared. As for Awa, her life at school started to reflect the dreams she once believed were too far out of reach. She made friends, joined the school choir, and even started mentoring a few younger girls who had similar backgrounds. She never forgot the pain of standing in the heat for hours hoping for someone to buy her peanuts. But now, instead of peanuts, she carried books. Instead of dodging cars to sell, she stood in line at the library to borrow novels. One day she stood before her class to give a presentation about her role model. Everyone expected her to talk about a celebrity or famous historical figure. But she looked up, smiled, and began, "My role model is the president of Burkina Faso, because he saw me when I thought I was invisible." That speech went viral. A teacher recorded it, and within hours it had spread across social media platforms. The sincerity of Awa's words, her poise, and her unshakable gratitude moved hearts far beyond the borders of Burkina Faso. Human rights organizations picked up the story. Media outlets across Africa and even in Europe and America shared the video. It was translated into French, English, Swahili, and Arabic. Suddenly, Awa wasn't just a Burkina-based story. She was a global symbol of hope. President Traoré, in a rare television address, acknowledged the attention the country was receiving. "This story is not about me," he said. "It's about what happens when a nation decides to lift up its children instead of letting them fade away in the shadows." He pledged further expansion of educational access and called on neighboring nations to prioritize their youth as a matter of national survival. His message was clear. Without investing in children, there is no future. NGOs began offering scholarships to support students like Awa. A regional university even offered to reserve a spot for her when the time came. But the real change wasn't just in the policies or the programs, it was in the people. In markets, vendors began pooling small donations to help support children selling beside them. Teachers volunteered extra hours to tutor former street kids. Awa's story had activated something powerful, a collective conscience. Journalists who had followed politics for decades commented on the shift. One wrote, "Traoré's legacy won't just be about military strength or sovereignty. It will be about choosing to kneel beside a girl on the street and offering her a future." And still, through it all, Awa remained humble. When asked what she would do if she met the president again, she smiled softly and said, "I would tell him thank you, and I'd ask him to do the same for more girls like me." 1 year after that chance roadside encounter, a national ceremony was held to celebrate the first anniversary of the L'Espoir des Jeunes initiative. The president personally invited Awa and her mother. Dressed in a modest white dress and wearing her school badge with pride, Awa walked onto the stage and received a standing ovation from a packed crowd of diplomats, educators, and students. She didn't give a long speech, just one sentence, "Thank you for giving me back my dreams." And that was enough. Because in that single sentence was a truth that resonated deeper than policy papers and development plans. It was the truth of a young girl who once had nothing and now held everything: hope, education, and a future. The president stepped onto the stage, stood beside her, and without a written speech, looked into the crowd and declared, "Let her story be the standard. Let her dreams guide our work. Burkina Faso must rise, and it will rise through its children." That moment would be etched into the memory of the nation. For Awa, the road ahead remains long. There will be exams, struggles, and challenges, but she no longer walks that road alone. Her journey is backed by a president's promise, a country's attention, and the unwavering belief that even the smallest vendor on the street deserves the chance to become someone great. Her life, once marked by survival, is now a beacon of possibility. And through her, Burkina Faso tells the world, when a leader listens to the unheard, when a country invests in its children, miracles become policy, and dreams, reality.